Live button, so we have to wait for the stream to fire up all across the internet. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, and we need it to be alive and well before we can get things kicked off into high gear. And as we all know, sometimes YouTube can be a little bit slow, but I think we are on and alive and well, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. And throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We have judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice, and it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and me to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. That's why we started this show called Watching the Watchers, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency back down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. And we're grateful that you are here and with us today. We've got a lot to get into. We're going to be talking about President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. They are zip-zapping doodah day all over the world now. They're traveling around. Kamala Harris is down south of the border in Mexico today. Yesterday, she was in Guatemala. We're going to follow up on that. But today, Joe Biden sounds like he's making his way over to Europe. And back home, domestically speaking, some people in the Democratic Party are not so happy about this. Kind of feel like some of the Biden administration agenda has hit a standstill. We've got some news on what's going on there. We've got sort of a halt with some conversations that are taking place with senators. Senator Joe Manchin now came out and said something like he's not going to be really supportive of any policy changes that might invoke the sort of require the overcoming of the filibuster, which kind of means that maybe Biden's agenda really does in fact come to a halt. So we're going to talk about some of those trips. Some interesting things are going on there. Then we're going to talk about, surprisingly, another foreign affairs case. Kim Jong the North Korean dictator, is working on his dad bod for the summer. So we're going to talk about that story as well. Then we're going to talk about what's happening with taxes in America. If you know, if you've been following this channel for some time, you know I kind of have a little bit of a sore spot when it comes to taxes. Well, we have a new story out from ProPublica that says that a lot of the billionaires don't like paying taxes either. Apparently so much so that they pay essentially 0%. Zero, which means we're going to be talking about Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, all of these people who are always out there telling the rest of us that we should be very happy and patriotic to pay taxes and that it's sort of for the social good, that you're sort of an evil, greedy monster if you are against raising taxes on the rich, they tell us. But lo and behold, they are the rich and they don't actually pay any taxes. So rules for thee, but not for me. We're going to break down that story. Some interesting stuff are going on there. Then, of course, the big news that is not being talked about in the mainstream media is the Hunter Biden text message story, where apparently he was having conversations with his attorney and using the N-word. Ugh, this guy. Come on. All right. So we're going to talk about that. Now, ordinarily, I don't like to sort of peer into people's text messages, especially when they're going back and forth between them and their lawyer. But I happen to be a lawyer, and so I've got some perspective I want to share here. And I also take issue with this because this is surrounding an issue that we have been on the receiving end of for a long time here. And I'm talking about Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and other people who are aligned with that political ideology, scolding the rest of us, telling us what a bunch of racist white supremacists we are, when lo and behold, they're using type of language that resembles that. And I don't talk that way, and I know you don't either. So we're going to talk a lot about that. We've got a lot to get into. If you want to be a part of the show, I would love to invite you to do that. I'm going to right now. Watch. Go on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And if you want to support the show, you can join our community over there. And there's a lot going on there. We've got a monthly meetup that is coming up at the end of June. We have a law enforcement interaction training, which is happening this Saturday. I posted the registration link finally over there, so you can go and register for that. Should be fun. We've got a free copy of my book that's available for you. You can download that. A copy of my existence systems program. But the real reason to go over there is so you can participate in the live chat that is happening right now. So you can ask a question, lob a comment, throw out a criticism, whatever your heart desires. Send it over to Miss Faith right now. She is going to be clipping those and adding those into the slides. And so we're going to be talking about all of your questions as well. A couple quick reminders before we move on. There are some links in the description down below where you can check out some other things that I'm working on. I released a I thought it was a pretty good video last night about the dark side hackers group. So dark side ransomware, we know that they took out the pipeline on the east coast of the United States. Well, the FBI seized $2.3 million of their cryptocurrency, their Bitcoin. And it's kind of interesting how they were able to trace this money. They actually went and found the hackers and seized their Bitcoin. So I went through the affidavit and the warrant that was issued from the Northern Court out of California, all on my second channel, and the link directly to that video is down below. Also, got the existence system course up over at Gumroad and reduced the price on that. So if you want to check that out, going to be moving some stuff over to Gumroad, which is a very cool learning platform. So the link to that description is down there below. We have Arizona Law, our Arizona Law channel at the R&R Law Group. We love to help good people facing criminal charges. And so if you happen to know anybody in our state that needs some help, send them to our YouTube channel below. We've got a lot more information and new content coming out there as well. And so that is it. By way of introduction, thank you everybody for indulging me in that. We are going to get into the news, and it's going to start right now. President Biden and Kamala Harris are traveling around the world. Yesterday, we talked about condescending Kamala Harris going down to Guatemala and wagging her finger in the faces of the Guatemalans and saying, hey, we have an immigration problem in our country. That's why I'm coming down here to you to talk to you about it, because I'm expecting you, Guatemala, to solve our immigration problem for us. So that didn't go over too well. Kamala Harris was out there telling people from the stage, don't come to America, don't come, right? And we sort of recall her during the election season having a very different tone, talking about America being a place that welcomes all sorts of immigrants. We talked about a tweet that she posted in 2017 that also resembled that more welcoming tone. And then she goes down and suddenly says, don't come, right? And so she's not very warmly received. So kind of a miss on that. And we're going to talk about the White House sort of is perplexed as what the heck happened there. Then she goes on Lester Holt's show and says, oh, we've already been to the border. And he says, no, you haven't. What are you talking about? You've never been down there. And she says, well, I haven't been to Europe either. What do you think about that, Lester? And he's also going, I'm feeling pretty perplexed here myself. So a lot of perplexion coming on from Kamala Harris. But now she's in Mexico. So we're going to talk about that. Now she's actually going to a country that does border the United States. So that's a little bit of an improvement. We're going to see if she scolded them as well for them not solving America's problem. We'll see how they react to that. And, you know, on this story, I was thinking about this yesterday. I mean, how condescending is it? How would you feel as an American if some other politician came into our country, traveled here, and took the stage at the United States Congress or congressional building in the Senate or the House, I don't care, and they give a speech lecturing us about what the problems that we are contributing to their nation? What the hell? What would we say? I would be throwing a fit on this channel. Get the hell out of our country. Don't tell us how to do our business. Thanks for your opinion, but no thanks. Get the hell out of here. And so for some reason, Americans or Kamala Harris, they think that it's okay to go into other people's countries and do that. Just say, hey, Guatemala, we got an immigration problem, but it's your fault. And we need you to fix it because we can't do anything about it at our own border. And meanwhile, many people forget that in one man's humble opinion, the reason that we have the border crisis in the first place is because of the dramatic policy changes that we saw as a result of this new administration coming in. This problem exacerbated suddenly right after January 20th. Isn't that convenient? Because the policies change. So condescending Kamala Harris can go down to Guatemala and Mexico and wherever she wants in the world and wag her finger at those people. But what is the root cause of this is not global warming. It's not whatever's happening down there. It's the fact that the United States is creating perverse incentives, incentivizing people to come to the country. So if Kamala Harris really wants to get some ROI, some return on her investment of her time as a leader, maybe that's where she should focus rather than blaming other countries for it. Just a thought. Now, Joe Biden is joining in on the fray. So he's picking up and he's going over to Europe, heading over there. But many Democrats are sort of scratching their heads saying, why are they flying around to different parts of the world when the domestic agenda of the new Biden administration, the one that they promised during this last election, seems to be screeching to a halt? What's happening here? Well, The Hill gives us an update. They say Biden heads to Europe at a difficult moment for his domestic agenda. This was published today on June 9th by Brett Samuels and Alex Gangitano, says Biden's headed to Europe on Wednesday, an inopportune time for his first foreign trip as president, as his domestic priorities hit rocks. And so what are we talking about? We've seen a lot of this happen this past week, but the president, so Biden himself, cut off infrastructure negotiations on Tuesday with Shelley Moore Capito over from West Virginia, who was the top GOP negotiator in the Senate on the issue. So after the discussion on Friday, both sides left far apart on key issues. So, sounds like infrastructure is kind of coming to a stall. Biden said he's going to instead move forward on discussions with a bipartisan group of senators who are separately preparing another infrastructure proposal of around $880 billion, less than the top line figure that was discussed by Capito. All right. So then that was one senator out of West Virginia. Didn't work so well with her. Then we have Joe Manchin, the other senator from West Virginia, that is also not playing ball with the Democrats. Joe Manchin, another Democrat from West Virginia, separately sent a torpedo into the Democratic agenda by making it clear he has no intention of weakening the filibuster, even if Republicans block Democratic legislation. He announced his continued opposition to the For the People Act, the sweeping votes legislation that is a dumpster fire. So that sounds like it's not going to be going through. And the last I read, Joe Manchin actually met with some other people. I think it was yesterday. All this happened pretty quickly. Joe Manchin came out and said, nope, filibuster's not going away, which essentially means, for those who are not familiar with some of the political terminology here, that the Democrats need more than the 51 votes that they have. So as we recall, this last election was what it was, and the Democrats now have 50 seats in the Senate. Now they have Kamala Harris, who is the vice president, so she makes up the tie-breaking vote. 50 Republicans, 50 Democrats, plus Kamala Harris. They have 50 plus 1. They technically have the majority. But there still is a rule called a filibuster, which means that in order to end debate on a certain topic as it's working its way through Congress, they got to get more than just the simple majority in order to end the debate. And the reason why this rule is in place, it's arguable. The Democrats hate it, of course, because they're in power and they want to cram a bunch of stuff through the Congress. But when they are not in power, suddenly they're kind of okay with the filibuster. So this is something that everybody sort of wants away when it is a speed bump or a roadblock to their agenda. But the point here is that the Democrats, as long as the filibuster rules exist currently, they don't have enough via simple majority to pass anything. And so they wanted Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema from here in Arizona to just go in and say, listen, all right, look, the filibuster's pretty good for these other things, but we're going to break it. We're going to change the rules just for the People Act, just to pass voting through, because voting is so important. And Joe Manchin, to his credit, and Kyrsten Sinema, I mean, these are two, Democrats that are, by some, miracle, doing something that I think is the right move, and they are not getting rid of the filibuster. And I would say this even if the tables were turned, right? We don't want pinball legislation happening where every time any party gets a simple majority in Congress that they can pass whatever they want because there's no speed bump stopping them from doing so. The filibuster is intended to sort of put the brakes on legislation coming through so that, let's say next year, Republicans take control of the Senate. Are they going to pass a bunch of bills through with a simple majority vote and undo everything the Democrats did? So we don't want that. We want to say, look, if we're going to be passing major bills, we want it to be somewhat bipartisan. And so we set the rule and we set the filibuster in place to slow things down. So Democrats currently, according to The Hill, says they seem not to have a plan for how to handle Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, or a clear strategy for moving forward. That's led for new calls from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Biden, who will now have to manage and advise on these issues, especially as Biden meets with President Vladimir Putin coming up soon next week, the high-profile summit meeting. So that should be fun. We'll see how that goes. The optics are obviously not ideal, says Casey Burgat, a director of legislative affairs program at George Washington. Says that we'll probably hear the press secretary and administration be purposeful in talking about how he's still working, working the phone lines from afar. But the optics of leaving D.C. while D.C. is mired in gridlock is obviously not ideal, right? So this is somebody who's sounds like a director of legislative affairs from George Washington. We also see that the pressure on Biden to move forward on different phases comes as he is eager to make a strong impression with foreign leaders that American foreign policy is shifting from the Trump years. Well, Kamala didn't do such a good job of that. She went down there, and I'm not a Guatemalan or a Mexican, but I would imagine as an American, if some politician came into my country and started wagging their finger at me, that I wouldn't be particularly happy about that. Now, while Biden has meetings set up over the next several days, he's going to be meeting with Prime Minister from Britain, Boris Johnson, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. We've got Putin. White House officials said the president's domestic agenda won't take a back seat. So we'll see. You know, Biden is a very vigorous man. Okay. He can juggle a lot of things at the same time. Very vibrant, a lot of energy, always has the words ready to go. You say, hey, Joe, what's your take on that issue? Boom, facts, ready to go. Next one, next question. So he'll be able to juggle all of this while he's traveling to Europe. Now, the article continues, says, that said, Biden has made a point of holding in-person meetings, hoping that a personal touch can help break through the congressional gridlock. Longtime senator is a familiar face to many Senate colleagues because he's been in a Senate for about 200 years now. Being out of the country for a week could further set back hopes for progress, with both chambers of Congress only in town for a few weeks in June. They're not working. Biden has spent months feeling out whether a bipartisan deal on infrastructure is possible, but the talks with the GOP are at a dead end. Democratic lawmakers have also become increasingly impatient during the White House negotiations, calling on Biden to move on, leave the Republicans behind. They say there's a risk. Some close to the White House argue that expanding more time talking with Republicans who may never get to yes will cause the Democratic coalition to fray. The urgency to move forward via reconciliation has increased as the economic recovery hasn't surged, which some experts expected. And the back-to-back disappointing jobs reports in April and May, they're starting to panic because we're getting into next year. We've got midterms coming up here soon. So now they're we better get some stuff moved because there's a close window that is closing rapidly. Okay, if there is a shift in public sentiment in favor of the Republicans, the Democrats have a razor thin margin in both the Senate and the House. Remember, in 2020, even though Donald Trump lost the election, the Republicans, if I'm not mistaken, actually picked up seats in the House, which was one of the first reasons why many people were scratching their heads about the presidential top of the ticket outcome. But that's a separate topic. Here, if there is any movement of independence towards the Republicans, it's very likely that the Republicans will take back control of the Senate, take back control of the House. And so then what happens? Now you have a lame duck presidency because Joe Biden will not get anything through. So they need to get this stuff passed immediately. Otherwise, they may lose the opportunity to do that. And then you have a president that has a neutered administration for the following 2 years. And so Republicans now sort of have a lame duck that they run a strong candidate against, and maybe they take control of the presidency as well. So the changing of the tide here can happen very, very quickly. And so what they're recommending here, you see this word reconciliation, right? This is a budgetary procedure that they can use in Congress, which is sort of, it's reconciling both provisions, both separate bills, is sort of mashing them together using a budgetary maneuver. They did this back with Obamacare, if you don't recall. They said this was a spending bill. The House passed a bill, the Senate passed a bill. Then, if I'm not mistaken, they were different, and the actual Senate changed its constituency because I think Scott Brown won, but they had already passed a bill. So it didn't pass a filibuster-proof majority, so they just passed it as a spending measure. They did reconciliation, boom, Obamacare became law. So they're trying to do that again with some of these other bills. Problem is, the parliamentarian in the Senate has said specifically that you can only do that, I think, for budgetary bills, not for something like For the People Act. So in other words, then they would need Manchin or Kirsten Sinema to go in and actually modify the rules. Both of them have indicated they're not willing to do that. So we'll wrap up this article. It says the top agenda items that would require 60 votes in the Senate to pass are things like the election reform bill, America's Families Plan, and policing reform. They're hitting a major roadblock with moderate Democrats up in opposition to altering the filibuster, right? So Democrats are sort of not working with themselves, apparently, and so they're not happy about that. Some Democrats and strategists close to the White House believe a sense of uncertainty that has emerged around Biden's agenda in recent days may be overstated. They pointed to transportation bills and other stuff. They think, he's doing a great job. So we'll see about that. Now, something interesting happened when Biden was on his way out. You know, sometimes you just kind of get a bad feeling about things, like something is just not right around you. Well, if you are a biblical person, you may have heard of, a biblical plague. You may have heard of locusts sort of, washing over Egypt, and this idea of the end of the world on the back of a lot of the biblical breakdowns, the plagues rummaging through our lives. Well, we're not talking about locusts. We're talking about cicadas. And Biden's press plane was invaded by them before he took off, right? So this is what they look like. And cicadas are all over the place here. We have them in Arizona. We have them, elsewhere around the country, but so does Joe Biden. MSNBC says that the brood cicadas that rose from the earth after 17 years underground, they've proved their determination. On Tuesday night, the bugs claimed another surprising accomplishment. They grounded the White House press corps as it headed for the President Biden's overseas trip. The White House press charter was delayed due to mechanical issues caused by cicadas. And they said, what? They said, yes, cicadas. So it's the press airplane that is just being overwhelmed in biblical fashion by cicadas. Sounds about right. The White House press corps was en route to the president's trips in Europe, going to meet with European Union, NATO, Vladimir Putin. Press charter flight. It was delayed by the cicada issues until 2:40 a.m. Naturally, the cicadas had significantly delayed a flight full of journalists. The news spread quickly. No, John Lemire isn't kidding. The White House press charter for the foreign trip is delayed several hours because of cicada-related mechanical issues. Not good week for the Biden administration plane, said New York Times' Michael Shear on Twitter. First, mechanical issues with the VP plane. Now the press charter POTUS trip is delayed because the engines were invaded by cicadas. I'm going to remember this never-ending flight 17 years from now. Cicadas, tweeted another CNN correspondent. So, look, folks, I don't know what to make of the cicadas, but here's Joe. Joe Biden got attacked by one himself. Here it is. Oh, there it. Oh, dang it. I don't know what this means for America. I mean, gut reaction is not good. So we'll see how this foreign trip goes over to Europe where he's meeting with Putin. So that should be fun. All right. Now, I mentioned earlier at the outset of this segment that the White House was a little bit confused. Kamala Harris, many people recognize what an excellent politician she is. I mean, she got like 6-7 votes, I think, during the Democratic primaries. And so I think she had to, she actually may have dropped out before they even voted one time. So we know that maybe her retail political skills leave a little bit to be desired, but could anybody have imagined it would be this bad? Well, even the White House is confused. According to Mediaite, the White House is, quote, perplexed by Kamala Harris's performance on her first foreign policy trip, according to CNN, they say. Now, perplexed is one of those words that sometimes you can read a story like this and go, well, is this accurate? Do they really feel confused about this? But perplexed, love it. So that's how you know this is accurate. Unnamed White House insiders were left, quote, perplexed by the performance of Kamala on her recent trip. The report comes from CNN's Jeremy Diamond, joined the vice president on her trip and shared his insights with New Day Wednesday morning. Early in this administration, Joe Biden assigned Harris the unenviable task of ostensibly overseeing the border issue. We've talked a lot about this. She said, well, she's not really going to focus on the border because that is a problem. So she's going to focus on Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, which of course are not border countries. So she's going to fly over the border and go into these countries to try to address it. Now, Harris has been a lightning rod for criticism because they have been focused on the fact that she is unwilling to visit the border since she took office. Now, I did learn today that she has agreed to go down there. I think that she is communicating to somebody who's a part of the press pool following her around. She said something like, yes, I'll go. All right, stop asking me about it. Good God, I'll go down there. Leave me alone. So that's going to happen. One could argue that the refusal to participate was a grand gesture, that it's unnecessary political theater, but her critics have said, well, she should still go down there and play the part, right? VP Harris takes criticism from all sides in her first foreign trip. Diamond introduced a segment that won't be received well when the vice president stops. The vice president saw this trip as an opportunity to burnish her foreign policy credentials after entering office with very little foreign policy experience, said Diamond. She hoped to make real progress on the root causes of migration. He then noted some successes on the trip. Yeah, there's been some progress that's left some of the team administration officials, though, perplexed, and the vice president's team frustrated. Said that there was progress, but there are now concerns the progress may have been overshadowed by her answers to some of the questions that the team knew she would be facing. He explained in an interview where she had this conversation with Lester Holt. AOC came out and said that she was not happy receiving criticism from all sides. So it didn't go so well in Guatemala. But now Kamala's back in Mexico, and we'll see what the reaction to that is later on tomorrow. We got a quick little preview. this is a mix of diplomacy and controversy, according to Yahoo News. So she now is going over to Mexico, and we've got some pictures from this here. It says that she's gotten more attention back home over her controversies over her words on immigration. She angered some on the left by telling immigrants not to come. Do not come, she said. Then she created a dust-up by saying that she did go to the border. We talked about all that yesterday. Kamala Harris was sitting across from the Mexican president today at a long polished wood table that noted that there was interconnection and interdependence of the two nations. She was asked when she got home, said, do I declare this trip a success? She said, yes, I do. It's a success in terms of creating a pathway that is about progress. I can't stand when they speak like that. It is a success in terms of creating a pathway that is about progress. Nothing, that means nothing. Asked whether she would commit to visit the border, she says, yes, I will, and I have before. In her 2 stops, she pledged millions of dollars in U.S. loans and investment for housing, $130 million in improving working conditions, safety issues, child labor. Again, I don't know what that does to stop the flow of people over the border, but okay. Her 2-day trip to Guatemala and Mexico was aimed at curbing the influx of Central American migrants. Guatemala, she met with the president. Her news conference emphasized the issue of root causes is not going to be fixed in one trip that took 2 days. No, you're right. It won't. Do you know why? Because it's meaningless. It doesn't do anything. You didn't do much there. You know what would fix this pretty quickly? Maybe not 2 days, but much sooner than your timeline. Changing the policies here in the United States, not in Guatemala, not in Mexico, in the United States, because it's those policies that are creating incentives for people to pick up and drag their children across the desert and subject them to all sorts of abuse and harm along the way. Your policies, Kamala Harris, not everybody else that you blame, you call them racist and all that. That's well and good. I mean, you're free to do that. It's inaccurate. But the point here is what you're doing is causing the humanitarian crisis, not other people. The questions that dog the vice president, as well as others, says that she has not visited the border and all of that. Mexico City, the primary focus was again on immigration, but she sought to more broadly define the diplomatic relationship. She says, we made clear the United States considers Mexico to be a partner on many of these issues. That's good. Characterizing her talks as candid and covering migration. Before their one-on-one session, Lopez Obrador said, mucho gusto. She responded in Spanish, it's very good to see you. They were greeted by salutes from everybody. The president of Mexico showed Harris a mural, so that's good. We've got another special envoy to Mexico said, we are both destination countries for migration. Their meeting with separate labor leaders. So look, yeah, again, not much interesting here is happening. This was interesting, though. Kamala Harris is still wearing a mask. So I saw this. You know, I know it's a mask. Look, I know it's petty. I'm trying to squeeze something out of this trip. I want to talk about something meaningful. There's nothing meaningful that happened. We're sending a bunch of money over there. She's telling them that we have an immigration problem. First foreign trip, scolding them not to come. Okay, so she's still wearing a mask, though, so I don't know if she's vaccinated or what the deals are. She's in Mexico, so I guess the CDC rules don't apply. Maybe the Mexican rules apply, but of course, the Mexican president is not wearing a mask. So Kamala Harris is still doing still grandstanding or whatever the heck she's doing. Here's another image. So no, she's speaking out here. Everybody's masked up again, right? Same story. So, okay, I guess that's a thing. Now, let's get to some real news. Now, all right, let's get to some real news. Let's talk about something that actually matters, because the foreign policy of this current administration thus far has been pretty much garbage. We'll see if Joe Biden's able to turn the ship around when he meets with Putin next week, but I don't have my hopes up for that one. I mean, Putin, ex-KGB sort of, he's out there like fly fishing and wrestling tigers. Joe Biden is having a tough time reading from a teleprompter on a regular basis without losing his breath and falling over. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not particularly hopeful about it. But in some actual interesting international news, we're talking about North Korea now. North Korea, they've got some serious things happening there. First and foremost, Kim Jong-un is working on his summer body. Dad bod Jong-un is back in business. He looks thinner. Looks pretty fabulous, too. Intelligence agencies, they're paying attention. This article came over from NK News, which is a whole website dedicated to what's going on in North Korea. And I came across this story and I just had to share it with you because it's fun. Here it's written by Colin Zwerko, posted yesterday, June 8th. North Korean Kim Jong-un reappeared in state media last Saturday. He has not been seen in public for almost a month. North Korean watchers were quick to point out that he looked like he may have lost a significant amount of weight. Good for him. Whatever he's doing. Looking good. Let's take a look. Though often the subject of less serious online commentary, Kim's weight and health are closely watched by foreign intelligence agencies, including South Korea's National Intelligence Service, said if Kim lost the weight intentionally to get healthier, well, then that likely improves his position at home. Being more secure at home, in turn, provides more predictability for regional actors like Japan, the Republic of Korea, and the U.S., who have greater confidence he's going to be running the show, right? So this is something I kind of joke about, but it is very interesting how intense they focus on this. And so let's take a look at what I'm talking about. These are images that came over from whatever one of the intelligence agencies is, and this is Kim Jong-un's wrist, right? And this is his watch. And they say that his watch is very expensive. I think it's like $10,000 or something. And so, he wears the same watch regularly. Now we have early images from last year, November 2020. This doesn't look like there's that much space here. So, he's on that, this watch is different, but he's kind of on that last little hole there, running out of space pretty quickly. And then suddenly you notice that this yellow little square down here looks like it might be squeezing up a little bit, getting a little bit, maybe a little bit heavier, a little bit lighter, looks a little bit lighter. So it's kind of going this direction, right? And we see this was on March 5th. And then suddenly look at all this extra strap. We got extra strap, folks. Now we fast forward to June 5th, 2021. Kim Jong-un is looking pretty good. Now, do we have a picture of him? Let's make sure. Let's see if we've got a picture of this fella. I don't know that we actually got a full picture. So we'll take a look at that. Let me show you the rest of this article. See if Miss Faith can grab a picture of him quickly from where he's at. See if she can squeeze that in with the comments. Now, meanwhile, North Korea, they've been making structural changes and altering propaganda strategies since last year to emphasize the role of the party central committee, slightly minimizing the centrality of Kim Jong-un. So I skipped a paragraph here. So I wanted to show you this, right? We've got sort of two hypotheses. If this was something he intended to lose weight over, it's great news, right? He's going to be around for a while. That's a good thing. But if the sudden weight loss is due to a health condition, might be in for some problems. Looks like there may be a jockeying for his succession, which may be already happening behind the scenes. That volatility could be trouble for the outside world. The forensics agency is the North Korean News Forensics Analysis. They looked at state media imagery. It suggests that Kim does appear like he is thinner. The luxury watch he frequently wears seemed to be fastened more tightly than before an apparently slimmer wrist, right? So that's that image right there. And it's kind of a funny, it's a funny image. For instance, a group of officials under Kim called the Politburo Presidium was given a more prominent role in 2020. Party rules were amended in January 2021. They officially established a clear number 2 position under Kim. Slogans and symbols representing Kim were also erased from the display in months, replaced with slogans glorifying the party instead. Regardless of these changes, whatever Kim's weight is, he appears firmly in control. He showed up on June 8th with the state media, reporting he guided a political meeting and provided his personnel solutions to the nation's economic troubles. He's also remained the central focus of propaganda in state print media. Last week, Kim is set to appear at a party plenary meeting that could last for several days. So, all right. So Kim Jong-un is looking fabulous. My slides don't look like they are syncing, unfortunately. So let me see what is going on over here. And I'll have Miss Faith send me a different link to the slides. For some reason, they are not syncing up today. So we're going to get back to those questions, and we're going to jump into the next segment for the time being. Taxes. If you've spent some time on this channel, I've talked a lot about taxes. They drive me bananas. The reason why is because, in my opinion, when you are living your life and you are creating value in the world, what you're doing is sort of transmuting your life into that product. It's called the labor theory of value, and it's the idea that we mix our labor with our work and we create value. And when the government just takes a piece of that right off the top, I've got a big problem with that, because in my opinion, they are sort of taking your life away from you. You are turning your life, mixing it with your labor, creating a product, and the government just says, well, we're going to take 30% of that. And you say, for what? And they tell you a bunch of stuff that they tell you you're getting, but in reality, I doubt it. I think that we could get those things without them taking so much away from us. And so I've got a big problem with this. I can spend hours talking about it. I regularly rant about all of the different taxes that we pay on a regular basis, in addition to income tax. Everything you do, every purchase has sales tax. Every time you take a trip, there's all sorts of national security tax, airplane tax, taxes out the wazoo. When you land, there's hotel tax and all sorts of tourism taxes. Every time you pay your water bill, your gas bill, your electric bill, every time they come and pick up your trash, you're paying taxes for that. Then when you make investments, you pay capital gains taxes, you pay property tax. Everything is taxed everywhere you look. And then to add insult to injury, you got to pay a portion of your income to the government as well, because they're not getting enough. So I have a big issue when there are people out there who are supposed to be our leaders. They're running big countries or big governments, or they're elected officials, or they're even in the private sector and they're running big companies like big corporations. And it seems like no matter sort of where they're at, if they are in this upper tier, if they're in the upper echelon of our societal structure, then they are part of what is an oligarchy. They are people who are dictating rules and telling us how we should live our lives while they are not walking the same walk. And so we hear regularly from a lot of these entitled people who say that the rest of us should be paying more taxes, that we got to raise taxes on the rich. And we often hear even people like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and Warren Buffett say, we make too much money. We would love to be taxed more. Raise our taxes through the roof. They know that it doesn't impact them, because what's happening here, folks, long story short, is they are not really being taxed because they're not selling their assets. They are taking loans on their assets. So let's take a quick example before we dive into the meat of this. I'm just going to synthesize the whole thing quickly here. Elon Musk, hypothetically, say on any given day he's worth $150 billion. A lot of that money is tied up in assets that is not liquid. It's in stock, it's in other assets. So when he were to, let's say he were to sell some of that stock, $50 billion worth of stock, he takes a gain and he's got to pay taxes on that difference. So why would he do that then? What if there's an alternative? What if he says, okay, well, how about that $50 billion? I just use that as collateral for a loan. So I go take out a loan from some bank somewhere else, and I use that money as livable income. I do whatever I want with that money. Then I just repay the loan back from my other assets, my other income. I liquidate whatever I need to do in order to pay that money back. And you're creating this little bit of a game. When you're paying a loan back, that's not taxed as a gain like it would be if you sold shares. So the tax rate for that transaction, that second transaction, is significantly lower than it would be if you or I sold our shares, sold our gain in stocks, for example. And so this is very simplistic way of sort of looking at this. But the point here is you could raise taxes on the rich people to 1,000%. Who cares? Because they're not paying taxes, because they're not realizing the gains that you think they are. Every time they make, $10 billion or it goes up a significant amount, that is seen in value in stock, but they're taking loans out, using that stock as collateral, and then not paying taxes on the repayments that they're making through the loans back to the banks. I know that probably sounds very complicated and convoluted, but the point here is that these rich people who wag their fingers at all of us, telling us that the rich don't pay their fair share and all that, they're the ones who are not paying their fair share. And as a side note, I am not pro taxes. I do not encourage higher taxes. Okay. I am not in the camp that says, well, we should just tax everybody to death. Don't believe that at all. I think that taxes are largely destructive. I don't blame Bezos or Zuckerberg or Bloomberg or Carl Icahn or George Soros for not wanting to pay taxes. Taxes are destructive. I don't want to pay taxes either. And look what these people are doing by not paying taxes. They're creating some pretty amazing things around this world. Now, I also agree that if there shouldn't be crony capitalism. We shouldn't be creating a system where certain corporations are able to sort of commingle themselves with the government to such a degree that they get special privileges over some people that, like me, that are small businesses that don't have billions of dollars to go use as collateral to secure loans so that we don't have to pay taxes. We pay a ton of taxes, and to our detriment and to society's detriment, because I could do a lot more with the money that we give to the federal government than they can. So can Elon, so can Soros, so can Zuckerberg. So rather than us sort of having this battle constantly over, well, they don't pay as much taxes or they don't pay as much taxes, and this class warfare BS, can we just agree that taxes are destructive? They are confiscatory, and they are taking a part of your life away from you. There better be a damn good reason before they do that. So anytime that I just hear people getting flippant about raising taxes, think of the children, think of the kids. We are thinking of the kids. We are thinking of the children. This is the worst way to provide for their future, by creating an environment that doesn't produce anything. It's just sort of redistributing some money from one group to another while the government grifts off of it and society continues to spiral down into the gutter. So I'm not happy about it. And I'm not happy that these guys are escaping the rules, but this is the system, folks. And so the point of this whole segment here is really just to double down and confirm that I got a huge stinking problem with taxes, and I have a huge problem with the people who tell us that we should be paying more when they turn around and they don't do that. When they don't do, it's a double standard. They're telling us that we got to pay them because they know that they have a mechanism figured out in their own lives that insulate them from the same obligations. And that's a problem with our government. That's a problem that we allowed it to get to this point where there is this interface between private corporations and public government, where we can create these little loopholes that can be exploited to the detriment of us, of the little people. All right, enough of the rant. Let's get into the story. This is coming over from ProPublica, and they're not, look, the IRS, the government is not happy about this. Anytime that you anger a bunch of billionaires, it's not good. Now, many people think that our senators are the most powerful people in the country and that our Congress people should be held in the highest regard. Folks, there was, I can't remember the name of the quote who said it, but there was some, billionaire Vanderbilts back in the 1900s or whatever that said, why would I ever run for Senate? I already own the best senators money can buy, right? It's the same concept here. And these big tech platform organizers, the people who are sort of, steering the conversation throughout this country, they know that. They know how this works. And so the idea that we're going to hold our elected officials accountable to go and get these people to, sort of nudge them back into the standard operation of what tax policy should be is something that I don't have any hope for. All right, so let's go back to the article now. Enough of this. I told you I can go off on this. All right. The ProPublica says, these secret IRS files, the trove of never-before records, show how the wealthiest avoid income tax. Posted June 8th yesterday. Jeff Bezos, multi-billionaire, now the world's richest man, did not pay a penny in federal income taxes in 2017. Did it again in 2018. No taxes, not one penny. 2018, Tesla founder Elon Musk, second richest person in the world, also paid no federal income taxes. Bloomberg managed to do it in the same recent years. Carl Icahn, billionaire, did it twice. George Soros paid no federal income tax 3 years in a row. Okay, we're talking about like hundreds of billions of dollars between these people. ProPublica obtained a vast trove of IRS records of thousands of the nation's wealthiest people, covering more than 15 years. We've got Bill Gates, Rupert Murdoch, Mark Zuckerberg. Shows not just their income and taxes, but also their investments, their stock trades, their gambling winnings, and even the results of their audits. Oh my goodness, folks. For all of those people, ProPublica, Jesse Eisinger, Jeff Nelson, and Paul Keel, they just angered the ruling class in this country. And I mean the actual ruling class, not the elected politicians. ProPublica says, taken together, it demolishes the cornerstone myth of American tax systems that everyone pays their fair share and the richest Americans pay the most. The IRS records show that the wealthiest can, perfectly legally, pay income taxes that are only a tiny fraction of the hundreds of millions, if not billions, their fortunes grow each year. So, I sort of take issue with the phrasing of this. Everyone pays their fair share. I don't know that I've ever heard that, right? I don't know that I've ever heard that anybody believes that. Has anybody agreed that American tax system is everyone pays their fair share? I mean, there's something like 50% of people in this country that pay zero taxes, the last I checked. So if you make money in this country, you have to pay taxes. So yes, the people making more money are theoretically going to pay the most. Then you get to a certain threshold. Okay, remember what Joe Biden said? Rich is 400,000. Okay, we're talking about that's the definition of rich, 400,000. These people have billions. It's an order of magnitude different. We're not even in the same neighborhood. We're not even in the same zip code or state, for that matter. Most Americans, or many Americans, live paycheck to paycheck. They amass wealth in recent years, the median household income was $70,000. They paid 14% in taxes. Highest income rate, 37% for couples for earnings above $628,000. The ultra rich effectively sidestepped the system. How do they do that? They undertook an analysis. We compared the taxes from the 25 richest Americans to how much Forbes estimated they were worth. They came up with what they called their true tax rate. Results are stark. Of the 25 people, they saw their worth rise a collective $401 billion in 4 years. They paid a total of $13 billion in income taxes. The IRS shows that's only 3.4%. It's completely different for middle class people, okay? Completely different. From 2014 to 2018, $65,000 after taxes. But the bulk of their earnings were salaries. Their tax bills were almost as much, nearly $62,000 over that 5-year period. So let's take a look at this chart. Wealth, income, and taxes for the 4 richest people in the country. Wealth growth, so total income reported in this one particular year, $125 million. The true tax rate of a wealth for Warren Buffett grew by $24 billion. Okay, he reported $125 million in income. So you see how this works? So you report the $125 million in income because you have to liquidate a certain portion of your assets in order to pay probably the interest on the loan. But then you just keep the loan going and you just sort of keep making your minimum payments on the loan. And so you're only paying taxes on what you have to liquidate in order to cover the interest on the loan. So then he does that. And what you see here is a total reported income of $125 million. So he's paying taxes on $125 million at the high rate, which is $23.7 million. But that relative to the amount of wealth that his net worth increased was $24.3 billion. So $23.7 million out of $24.3 billion is only 0.1%. It's nothing. Same equation here with Bezos. $99 billion, reported $4.2 billion in income, paid almost $1 billion in taxes on top of that, but $1 billion out of $100 billion is like 1%, right? Same thing with Bloomberg, 1.3%. Elon, a little bit higher, 3.27%. So that's nice. Elon's paying a little bit more. It's great. All right. So no one among the 25 wealthiest avoided as much tax as Buffett, the grandfatherly centibillionaire. That's perhaps surprising given his public stance as an advocate of higher taxes for the rich because he doesn't pay them. Yeah, whatever you want. Right? It's like if you go to dinner, whatever, and somebody else picks up the bill, you order whatever you want. I would never do that, but some people do that, right? Yeah, whatever. Yeah, you're right. Rich people should pay more taxes because I'm not paying it. Raise it to 45%, 60%, 90%. What do I care? Because all of you other people, the non-ultra rich, the regular rich, or the $400,000 a year people, which in some areas is not that rich. You can look up the numbers, right? According to Forbes, his riches rose 24.3%, and he only paid $23.7 million in taxes. That works out to 0.1% or less than 10 cents for every $100 he added to his wealth. Experts have long understood the broad outlines of how little the wealthy are taxed. Few specifics about individuals ever emerge in public. Tax information is among the most zealously guarded secrets in the federal government. ProPublica has decided to reveal this information of some of the wealthiest Americans because it is only by seeing specifics that the public can understand the realities of our country's tax systems. Man, yeah, talk about, woof. When I was thinking about this case, I was thinking, these journalists, I was thinking back through my case law on First Amendment jurisprudence and sort of what kind of liability is ProPublica and these journalists opening themselves up to, because the government is not going to be happy about this. Oof. Experts, we see here, let's take a look at Warren Buffett. So 24.3 billion total reported income, 0.5% of his wealth. So he liquidates 0.5% of his total wealth to pay for his expenses and then just pays tax on the liquidation. See how that works? Consider Bezos, 2007. Same type of story here, 99 billion, 4.2, right? We got all that. His tax avoidance is even more striking if you examine 2006 to 2008, a period which ProPublica has complete data. His wealth increased by 127 billion, but he reported a total of 6.5 billion. 1.4 billion he paid in federal taxes is a massive number, yet it really amounts to 1.1% of the true tax rate on the rise in his fortune. Here's Jeff Bezos again. So we can just sort of chart these things out, right? This is the typical American household. Let's compare Bezos to regular Americans. While Bezos' wealth has grown astronomically over the last decade, he's paid a minuscule fraction of it in taxes. So here in the typical American household, you have time down here on the bottom. We're going to emerge from 2006 to 2018. On the y-axis, we have looks like maybe total net worth or net income for a particular year, up to $150,000. Average people, 2006, 2007, 8, 9, 10 come around. We have a major dip because people lost value in their homes. So their net worth and their total assets values went down. And then we go back up, right? And in America, because we have a graduated tax system, as you start making more money, you pay a graduated tax that is relative to the amount you make. But that's not what happens for Bezos and these other ultra wealthy. That doesn't change over this entirety of the time, right? He's still paying right around the same amount of taxes, even though his total net worth goes up dramatically. And again, folks, I'm not somebody to go in there and say, well, look, that 127 billion, maybe he should be taxed to death on that. It should be confiscatory. Somebody call up Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and, tax those millionaires and billionaires and all that stuff. I'm not for that, right? Amazon, what he's created is an amazing thing. It has transformed the entire country and the world. And somebody who is behind that level of innovation, I think, should be compensated and rewarded accordingly. And the current system creates a lot of that innovation. There's a good reason why these billionaires are doing everything they can to not pay taxes, because it is destructive. They know that. Now, my problem with them is that they're being very disingenuous. They're liars, essentially. They come out and they tell us all the time that we should all be happy paying more taxes, and that they're making their contributions. And I'm sure they'd come out and say, well, no, we pay a charity and, I create these jobs and all of that. I get that. And I would appreciate it if they put their money where their mouth is, literally, but they don't. They stash it all away. They tell us that they're doing something differently, and then they really are doing something that is dishonest, in my opinion. And so the whole facade here, I used to have a lot of respect for guys like Elon Musk and Bezos and Warren Buffett. The more and more that we learn about these people as these leaks continue to fall out, they're all just a bunch of liars. And they come out and they sort of play this role on TV like, hey, we're just, we're trying to do good in the world. And I'm just this grandfatherly old investor. I like Coke and what does he like? Coke and whatever, McDonald's or whatever he eats, Warren Buffett. And, Elon sort of has this marketing facade wrapped around him. This guy works 100 hours a week. He can suddenly somehow, fly us to Mars, dig tunnels underground, implant chips in your brain, solve the power grid crisis, put satellites in space, and the list goes on. And you go, really? One guy can do all of that? Or is this just a big, marketing thing that they're cramming down our throats? Along with this, you should like higher taxes facade that they are creating, that all of these ultra rich people like Zuckerberg, they're going to donate all their money. They're all just these good humanitarians. No, they're not. They're liars. They don't care about you or I. Neither do the Democratic politicians. Neither do any of the politicians who are wagging their finger down our faces about raising taxes on the rich. They're all a bunch of liars. They know it. And they still try to sell us the lie year after year after year. They know it's destructive for us. That's why it's okay if it's for us, but not for them. And I'm tired of it. ProPublica is not disclosing how it obtained the data. It was given to them in raw form, no conditions or conclusions. Reporters spent months processing and analyzing the material to transform it into a database. We then verified the information by comparing elements with dozens of the already public tax details in documents. They vetted it with individuals whose tax information was contained in the trove. Every person described in the story was asked to comment. Those who responded, including Buffett, Bloomberg, and ICANN, all said they had paid the taxes they owed, right? And these guys, look, which is right. Look, I also don't fault them for using the rules that are in place, okay? If the government, which is incompetent, wants to set rules and people are going to exploit those rules, what would you expect? We talk about this a lot here. People have ambitions, and we want to pit ambition against ambition. And we need to know that this happens. Madison wrote about it in Federalist 51 or 59 or whatever that one was. We know that people have these incentives. We have to govern accordingly. We don't just govern on hopes and promises. We don't govern on the fact that Warren Buffett says, I think we should have higher taxes on rich people. Well, okay, so is that our policy? We're just going to ask these billionaires to pay out of the goodness of their heart? Like, we're just going to take their word for it? the honor system for taxes with the billionaires? No. So why wouldn't they take advantage of it? Of course they would. Of course they should. All right. Our analysis of the tax data quantifies how unfair the system is. 25 are worth $1.1 trillion. For a comparison, it would take 14.3 million ordinary American put together to equal that same amount of wealth, right? So again, I don't care about any of that. The wealth differentials, yeah, they work harder and they've created different, more innovative products than most Americans. Sorry, okay? Jeff Bezos has created something way more substantial than I ever have and probably ever will. I hope not, but probably, and he should be compensated accordingly. So I hate this class warfare crap as much as I hate paying taxes. In the early years, the personal income tax worked as Congress intended, falling squarely on the richest. 1918, only 15% of Americans owed any tax. Top 1% paid 80% of the revenue raised, according to a historian. And again, 4 years later, Eisner. So now it's going into sort of, commentary territory. With the tax thing, they love to go back historically and talk about high taxes and about how the system worked back then. We collected a large part of it from only the wealthiest rich, and there was a percentage of like 92%, and the country got along just fine with higher taxes here. And you go, yeah, because that was back in the 1800s or the 1900s. They didn't have an IRS. They didn't have direct access into your bank account. In other words, they didn't have a system built out so that the taxes could just be siphoned off of your revenue, which is what happens now, right? How many times do you look at your tax bill? You look at your pay stub, taxes are already out, already been taken. Government just has that. So back in 1902, is the government, they can have a 92% tax rate, but are people paying it? Are they getting a 92% collection rate? Probably not. And the IRS was a fraction of what it is today, if it even existed about whatever time period we're talking about. So it's comparing two different time periods. It's not a fair comparison. All right, let's take a look. They have a nice little illustration here. Typical income. Let's go through this diagram. It says wealth and income work very differently for the ultra wealthy than most people. This is $100 of income for a typical wage earning American household. 10 by 10, we got $100 right there. The federal government taxes income. An American household might pay something like this, 14%. Okay, they're going to say this is typical taxes. So, and by the way, right, we're going to say this is just income tax. Right? Forget about gas tax and property tax and travel tax and every other stinking tax that you pay on a regular stinking basis. It's a lot of taxes. Right? Now, for many households, the rest of their income goes towards expenses every year with maybe a small amount left over for savings. So we go from here, the rest of that money is spoken for. So they got to pay these in taxes. A typical household might also own a home, which often grows in values. So we have the typical wealth growth, okay? Assets are appreciating. You have a savings account, you're funding a 401k, whatever. Here they're talking about a house. So of that $100, we have a little bit of growth and a little bit of taxes. The the proportion of wealth versus taxes has been about the same, okay? The wealth grows and we still pay taxes. You see how the boxes are still to scale? The box sizes have not changed. This is all to scale, right? And now we know that this is sort of how the proportion of wealth versus taxes has been typical for middle-aged Americans. However, it's inverted for the ultra wealthy. So we see taxes sort of more than growth, right? Now watch this. Here's Bezos's income. So this represents $100 of income from Bezos. His taxes here from 2006 to 2018 were 21% of his income. Okay, so kind of looks like the same here. Oh, wait, but for people like Jeff Bezos now, this was his wealth growth. Right here, we have, this is what the American household's wealth growth was. And their taxes still say here at 4 by 4. This is a 16 block. This is a 9 block. Here, this is Bezos. Bezos has a 25 block. And here his taxes stay the same, but his wealth grows massively. Income doesn't really matter. Bezos' Amazon shares, they've skyrocketed in value. His wealth grew far more than what he reported in actual income to the IRS. Between 2006 and 2018, income grew up over $120 billion, and he paid a minuscule portion in taxes. So this is what it looks like for the typical income, typical wealth growth, typical taxes. And then Bezos is for every $100 of wealth growth for Americans, typical Americans pay $160 in taxes. See how that works? You get penalized for growing your sort of net worth. not Bezos. He pays $109 for every $100, right? There's a second strategy that they use. Let's see, minimizes income and therefore taxes. Berkshire does not pay a dividend. The sum, a piece of the profits that many companies pay each quarter to those who own stock. Berkshire, Buffett, has argued that it's better to use that money to find investments that are further going to boost the values of the shares. Many Silicon Valley companies have followed the same practice. All right, so Buffett reiterated that he has begun giving his enormous fortune away, ultimately plans to donate 99.5% of it to charity. Yeah, we'll see. I believe the money will be more used to society if it's dispersed philanthropically than if it's used to slightly reduce an ever-increasing U.S. debt. Yeah, see, so he doesn't want to give the government their money either, because he knows it's just going to go right into the garbage can and pay down the debt, which the government accrued because they're incompetent. All right, what about Elon? Elon now. How do mega billionaires pay their mega bills while opting for $1 salaries? And hanging on to all their stock? Well, according to the public documents, the answer is borrowing money. So this is what the article tells us how this works. I framed this out at the beginning, but let's dig into it. For regular people, borrowing money is often something done out of necessity, like for a car, for a home. For the ultra wealthy, it's a way to access billions without producing income. And thus, with no income, there's no income tax. Tax math provides a clear incentive for this. Let's walk through it. If you own a company and take a huge salary, you pay 37% in income tax on the bulk of it. Sell stock, you pay 20% in capital gains tax, and you lose some control over your company. But if you take out a loan, and these days you'll pay a single-digit interest rate and no tax, since loans must be paid back. IRS does not consider them income. Banks typically require collateral, but the wealthy have plenty of that, right? And their stocks and all their assets. The vast majority of the ultra wealthy's loans do not appear in the tax records, since they're not disclosed to the IRS. Occasionally, they're disclosed in securities filings. In 2014, Oracle revealed that its CEO, Ellison, has a credit line secured by $10 billion of his shares. All right, so you just take a credit line, you use that for all of your expenses. It's secured by your $10 billion. You have a basically, $10 billion line of credit. Do whatever you want. Don't pay taxes on any of the money that you're using because it's just a loan and you're paying the loan back. Last year, Tesla reported that Musk pledged 92 million of shares that were worth about 57 billion as collateral for personal loans. Right? And so people walk around all the time and they're like, Elon Musk, man, he works so hard and I think he just takes a $1 salary. He's just doing this all for us. No, he doesn't. Okay. No, he's not doing it for you. He's doing it so he doesn't have to pay taxes. Because if he took home a $30 million salary, he's got to pay 37% taxes on that. So yeah, I'll just take one and I'm going to take my payment in the form of stock. And he just has these milestones that he's got to hit. And then he gets these big stock awards. That's more collateral. He can put up 57 billion or million or whatever as collateral for a loan, get all the money in the world he wants, not have to pay taxes on it. Pretty good. Unfortunately, I don't have $1 billion to put up as collateral. Neither do you, do you? Now, skeptics might question how our analysis of how little the super rich pay. They might say that owners of companies get hit by corporate taxes, right? Yeah, and they do, right? They might also counter that some billionaires cannot avoid income and no taxes after death. They said that these factors alter the fundamental picture. So now they're going to go and sort of, talk about why corporate taxes should be higher. So look, these people are paying, their companies are paying a ton of taxes, right? Payroll tax. Every single time that you buy a product on Amazon, you are funding the government. You're paying sales tax on that. So they are generating a ton of taxes. They're just not paying any of it personally. And they tell all of us that we should. So we're going to keep moving on through this article. It's a very long article. I would encourage you to go read through it. But I want to skip ahead and we're going to take a look at now what the IRS is doing as a response to this. So you get the picture here. The billionaires of the world, they lecture all of us about paying our taxes and then they just kind of don't do it themselves. So now the IRS, since all of this information was released, they are not happy. You don't ever insult the ruling class in this country. Otherwise, there will be repercussions coming for you. And you better believe that ProPublica is going to be in the crosshairs for the time being. Now, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that the IRS is investigating the release of the tax information of wealthy Americans. I don't think that they can do anything to the journalists, to ProPublica, but you better believe they're going to try to find out where this came from. This was updated yesterday, June 8th, by Richard Rubin. says that ProPublica published the details. Federal authorities now are investigating the release of wealthy Americans' tax information, according to the IRS. ProPublica, nonprofit, they published the information. We just went through all of it. Taxpayer information, as we know, is confidential. Mr. Rettig told lawmakers that there were internal and external investigations beginning with potential prosecutions to follow. I share concerns for every American about the sensitive and private nature of these. Trust and confidence in the IRS is sort of the bedrock that people are asking for. Was Trump's taxes in there? Huh. You know, I would guess that if they were in there and there was a problem, that they would be reporting about it. So I'm curious. Either they're not in there or there's not a problem with them. Huh. Right? All right, let's see what else we've got. ProPublica says that the news organization didn't know the identity of its source, described the information it received as IRS data on thousands of people covering more than 15 years. It isn't certain that the information, a highly unusual airing of private tax data, came directly from within the IRS or whether the agency was hacked into some way. The article highlighted years in which Mr. Bezos paid little or no federal tax. I'm sure he is not happy. The IRS systems that track employees' access to taxpayer information, and the agency has fired workers in the past for unauthorized access. But an Inspector General's report last year said that there were potential gaps in those systems. ProPublica said that personal and corporate representatives of Mr. Bezos declined to receive detailed questions about the tax information, okay? Pay close attention. Declined to receive them. In a written response, Mr. Buffett told ProPublica, I continue to believe the tax code should be changed, adding he thought huge dynastic wealth is not desirable for our society. So I think in a different part of the article, let's see, it said, yeah, so somebody, I'm pretty sure in some other part of the article that ProPublica sent a letter to Bezos saying, hey, we've got a list of questions for you. Can we send those over to you? And can you, let us know your thoughts? And they said, no, we're not willing to receive the questions. So don't even send them, right? Not like we're not answering those questions that you sent. It's, we're not even going to look at your garbage questions. Peasants, pay your taxes, leave us alone. Get off my land. Data in ProPublica story attaches specific numbers and names. Biden administration has proposed changing that system by imposing capital gains taxes on appreciated assets at death. So I don't know what that does for the living billionaires, but Democrats pointed to the disclosures on Tuesday as evidence for their case, right? So the Democrats are going to jump all over this and say, see, this shows we got to raise taxes on everybody. The big picture in the data shows that the country's wealthiest, who profited immensely during the pandemic, have not been paying their fair share, said Ron Wyden on the Finance Committee. What are you going to do about it? They own you. But the disclosures could hurt support for a different piece of the Biden tax enforcement plan, which would require banks and other financial institutions to provide the IRS with annual data. Republicans have been balking about that idea. All right, so we're going to see what happens. This will be very interesting. You better believe that these billionaires are not just going to let this one lie. All right, we're going to open up the separate slides over here. See if we can get some questions rocking and rolling here on this segment. And we know that unfortunately this just takes some time to load. So we're just going to hang tight here while this continues to do its thing. All right, Miss Faith sent that over. Let me show you, join in on the waiting game with me, because this is what we're looking at right now. So nothing quite there either. We're going to try opening up another PowerPoint slide. See if this one works. All right then. Well, so that was a good attempt, and we're going to just continue on moving into our next segment. There's not going to be any questions today. I don't know what the problem is, but that's all right. That means there's more time to talk about Hunter Biden. Oh, all right. We covered Hunter Biden for some time, but we're going to get back into it here today. The N-word, one of the worst words, if not the worst word in the entire English language. Something that is reprehensible, something that we have been told for a long time in this country is really connected to racism and some of the worst parts of America. We hear this from people like Joe Biden and from many others in the media and in our elected government who are constantly scolding people in this country for being white supremacists, or for being people who have white privilege, or for not teaching our children about the original sin that exists, that was birthed out when America emerged onto the world stage. And I'm talking about the original sin of slavery. We've been having a lot of this conversation here on this channel and throughout the rest of the last year, because we've been spending time talking about the summer of unrest and some of the interactions between law enforcement and civil society. And a lot of these problems, we're being told, stem from racism. And we've learned this because we elected Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, put them in the White House, and they are constantly lecturing us about this very regularly. We're going to show you a clip. We're going to show you an article, a press release from the White House talking about this, talking about rooting out racism and about asking Americans to do better and about ensuring that this is at the forefront of our conversation in this country. And by the way, I don't have any problem with that. I love progress in all sorts of different areas, provided that it's actual meaningful progress, provided that it's not some sort of political movement under cover of equality and justice, which unfortunately is sort of where this is trending. So when you think about the N-word and when you think about the big problem of racism as it's being defined by the current administration, well, you would imagine that there would be a big problem when the president's son uses the N-word in casual conversations. You would imagine that the media in this country, the same media that has been hyperventilating over every single incident involving the police for the last year, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, the list goes on and on. Okay, and they tie this all back to racism, to this fundamental problem with our society. They say it is systemic. That's how problematic it is. So what happens if the president's own son is using that in the White House, in the government? Maybe they're right. Maybe they are correct. Maybe this is a systemic problem. In fact, the very people who are telling us that we got to work to solve this problem, they don't even realize it, but their own kids, their own son, in the White House are using this type of language. Wow. Maybe it's time that we actually talk about it. And so you would imagine that journalists throughout America would be chomping at the bit to finally talk about this. We finally have a clear-cut example of a slow, low boil of racism emanating directly from the White House through the president's son. We should talk about this. Finally, America can have his moment. We can have a discussion, a dialogue. So when I went to go find what CNN had to say about it, this is what I found. Oh, go in there this morning. I was doing some prep for the show. Hop on CNN, type in Hunter Biden. Surely the story, the allegation that in text messages, Hunter Biden was using the N-word with his attorney and others, that would be at the front and center. It's a big problem. We've known other people throughout our society get canceled and thrown off the internet for even talking anything even remotely close to something as bad as the N-word. But when we go to CNN, nothing to be found. Result from June 8th, Rudy Giuliani. The call makes Trump's call look perfect. All right, so dumping on Trump, nothing new there. Next, we have the next article. For a Hunter Biden search, says that a judge grants a prosecutor's request as a special master to review material seized during the Giuliani raid. Don't know what that has to do with Hunter, but Giuliani apparently, of course, got the laptop from Hunter, so maybe that's it. So May 27th, Democrats fight to keep the changing lane. Nope, nothing about Hunter Biden over there. How about the New York Times? Well, on April 3rd, they posted an opinion. They were talking about Hunter Biden. We do a search for him. Says, oh, they're talking about his memoir. Isn't that nice? Right? Hunter Biden sends a love letter to his brother. Look at this beautiful picture of the two of them. Isn't that sweet? On March 30th, they talked about Hunter Biden, of course. 7 takeaways from Beautiful Things. President Biden's son opens up about crack addiction, his romantic relationship with his sister-in-law, and the new love that halted his cycle of despair. So they're absolutely willing to talk about those things. Love, new love, of despair, addiction, crack, romantic relationship, my sister-in-law, all this stuff. But not the N-word, are they? We go back March 25th, 15 books to watch for. Very excited for Hunter's new book, but nothing about the N-word there. Do you see it? Nope. And if you search a little bit narrower, Hunter Biden text, again, nothing there. Hunter Biden in general, nothing. Hunter Biden text, nothing. Now, to be fair, I did search for this stuff this morning, and the article came out yesterday. So you would imagine that they would have enough time to publish something about it, but they didn't. How about the Washington Post? Maybe they were on it, right? These people respond to breaking news, so you'd imagine that they would have something over here at the Washington Post. Anything? Nope. On June 7th, they talked about Hunter Biden's laptop. The April 16 dinner, President's son arranged for a top executive, so we got something there. The trailer, Trump won. Many ways that GOP is rewriting 2020, June 8th, so nothing about the text messages there. No text messages there. They want to focus on the future, but Trump is not done with the past. Okay, so Trump is lingering on to the past. Nothing about Hunter Biden's laptop down here. Laptop, and these are all, older stories. So nothing in the most, nothing. The media absolutely just blanks it out because it doesn't serve their interests. And I don't know how many times I have to, remind myself of this, that they are pure propaganda. But I'm always surprised. I mean, every time I go and I go through the Hunter Biden stuff, I always check, is anybody talking about it? No. It's the same story that we had the entire election. We had Tony Bobulinski. We had the hard drive leak. We had all of this information coming out about absolute smoking evidence of corruption involving Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. Gone with the wind. Oh, nobody wants to talk about it. Same thing's happening again. So it's just, when I see something as clear and obvious as this, it's just fun to just make sure we're all well aware. All right. So the Daily Mail, however, is an actual entity that does some journalism and some research and some reporting. And so they are the people that broke this story. So they're talking about it, of course. Now, they published this June 8th at 23:12 Eastern time. And we have published June 8th, written by Josh Boswell. It says exclusive from thedailymail.com. Hunter Biden addressed his white lawyer as the N-word. Now, it's the N-word with a G-A. Okay. Now, I don't know what that means or if that matters to anything. I don't know. I watched Larry David's Curb Your Enthusiasm, and I think he's okay with the G-A at the end. I'm not okay with it. It's just too hot for me. I just stay away from it, right? As best I can. Not okay with the G-A at the end or the other version of it. But Larry David, I think, got away with it. So it kind of depends. This is a complicated area. So and it was funny, by the way, that show's hysterical. So it was funny, but I think he's a billionaire. So he might have some other privileges that we don't. We know they don't pay taxes. Maybe they have racism immunity because he donates enough money to the right political, I don't know. It's complicated, but it is important to note it's a GA. Whatever that means. All right. So he says he used phrases like the N-word multiple times, used phrases like true dat N-word, and bantered, I only love you because you're black. Shocking texts unearthed days after Joe's emotional Tulsa speech decrying racism, right? Now we're going to go through this somewhat briefly here. Text messages say he used the N-word. President's son, he's 51, flippantly addressed a corporate attorney, George Masiris, who is white, by the racial slur with phrases like true dat, N-word. In a December 2018 conversation, Hunter asked Masiris, how much money do I owe you? Because N-word, you better not be charging me Hennessy rates. What? All right. In a chat a month later, he cracked jokes about his penis and then told him, I only love you because you're black. Hunter Biden, the president's son, the same president who's been lecturing all of us about racism and about discrimination in this country. In 2018, this is not 20 years ago. We're going to see it's also in 2019. Says it's so annoying when you interject with frivolity, says the Chicago lawyer. Yeah, man, we're talking about legal stuff. What are you doing? The damning texts have just emerged days after his father, Joe Biden, gave a speech decrying racism on the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa massacre. Biden has sought to portray racial justice as a top priority for his administration. Hunter saved a meme of his father hugging Barack Obama and a caption describing a joke conversation. Says, Obama says, gonna miss you, man, Joe. Joe says, can I say it? Just this once? Obama says, sigh, go ahead, Joe. And then Joe says, you, my N-word, Barack. Right. That's the president's son. We're going to take a look at the text here in a minute. He used the N-word multiple times. His lawyer cost $845 per hour, according to the text messages. Shocking texts may prove embarrassing for his father, who last week gave a speech decrying the Tulsa massacre. The president's son joked in a January 2019 text, joking about his big penis and said to his lawyer, I only love you because you're black and true dat N-word. January 2019. I don't know if Joe Biden had officially declared that he was running at that moment in time, but he was running at that moment in time. I think probably, I don't remember the timeline, but right? Because we have he absolutely was running because we had the election 2020. That might be at the early stages. So, all right. So in another month, he says, how much money do I owe you? Because N-word, you better not be charging me Hennessy rates. Mysteria said, that made me snarf in my coffee. Hunter added, that's what I'm saying, N-word. Or he actually cut off the racial slur. Then he texted a picture. So here that is. So it looks like attorney says there is zero coverage or pickup of the story. Zip. They spent a ton of resources on it too for a year. Wow. Thank you, Michael Cohen. Right. So they're talking about some story. I'd like to know what story that was. That was from 12/13/18. So maybe this attorney was brought in to write, a cease and desist or some sort of a threat. Says, oh, and you too. How much money do I owe you? Because N-word, you better not be charging me Hennessy rates. This is Hunter Biden. Says that made me snarf in my coffee. I just made that phrase up, by the way. I should have NAD your lineage. Clever son of a gun. Says it's wasted on you. Apparently you do. That's what I'm saying. Then he sends an image. Don't know what that is. Says, why are you so tan? I'm sorry for sexting you accidentally. That was meant for another friend named Georgia. He says, my girlfriend sent me a holiday card. Okay, so what is going on here? Okay, so this, I'm going to guess, is probably some sort of a sexual image, right? Something like that. It says, why are you so tan? Making a joke about something that he probably saw in there. It says, sorry for sexting you. That was meant for someone else named Georgia. And he says, my girlfriend sent me a holiday card. So maybe like, maybe like this was a nice image of whatever he took of his time with Georgia. He was sending it to Georgia. And he's saying, well, I don't get nice images like that, right? Like my, quote, girlfriend sent me a holiday card. So, not a good position to be in as an attorney, right? As an attorney, you're trying to be amicable with your client, and you're trying to foster a conversation and a relationship where you can be candid with one another and you can be jovial when it's time to be jovial, just like anything else, right? An attorney-client relationship doesn't have to be something that is cold and mechanical all the time. Attorneys can work with their clients and develop relationships. And sometimes you're working together for years, right? So you can work on a case for 2 years together. You're going to develop a very strong bond with that person. And, you want to have conversations that are a little bit more lighthearted. But I can tell you this, I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of clients. We have been in business for 7 years now. We've represented thousands of people. Never once have I had a client send me a sex image, call me the N-word, or challenge me for our rates or something like that. Hennessy, none of that. So I don't really know kind of what happened here and why they're joking about. It sounds like sexting images or something like that. Now, I don't have any commentary about the attorney. He's trying to walk a very fine line here. He's trying to, maintain a relationship with a client who's obviously not well, right? Hunter Biden sounds like he's got a lot of problems going on in his life in general. And sometimes attorneys are brought in to sort of, kind of keep people centered so that the attorney can say, if you do this thing, this is going to be a big problem. And here's why legally. Okay. If you have a friend with somebody and they say, hey man, that's a stupid idea. They go, yeah, it's stupid, but so what? If you have an attorney there, they say, well, that's stupid and you're going to go to prison. Here's why, right? That can have a little bit of a different effect. So you don't know if this attorney was brought in for something like that or what the real relationship here was, but this, not appropriate, not something that happens commonly in law. Let me just put it that way. Now we have the transcript here. They're talking about philosophy and they're just bantering with each other. He says, there are ideals. The lawyer says there are ideals of unconditional love that serve as proxies. I don't have many. You, God, he says, oh my God, N-word. Did you just a fictional character from the imagination, the collective frightened, and my dead brother's unconditional love is what I should rely on and my kids aren't children, George? What? He says, my parents' love was conditioned. He says, my penis as of late has been unconditional. He says, that's why we are searching. He says, for my penis. He says, we will always be searching. He says, it's a big penis, George. They can always find it. And I only love you because you're black. And Masiri says, it's so annoying when you inject with frivolity. He says, true that, N-word, but I'm done my rant. Right? So honestly, it sounds like he may be, high or on something. I don't know. It's hard to speculate, but what the heck are they talking about? It sounds like it went from a serious conversation. They were talking about philosophy and bantering, and he jumps into the penis talk and the N-word talk. So, okay, it is what it is. If this were a random person, I would absolutely not be going through their text messages, of course. This is the president's son. And in addition to the president's son, this is the son of a president who has told us repeatedly that racism is the biggest problem and that a lot of America's ills are steeped in white supremacy and racism. In fact, they've said that this is one of the biggest issues in the entire nation. We talked about this from domestic violent extremism. They're talking about unveiling new law enforcement, sort of policies and procedures. We've read many of them here on the channel talking about their response to this. And they're not even looking at their own kids, apparently, because this person was having conversations as recent as 2019, 2018, using the N-word, using racially charged language with his attorney as his father was running for president. And Joe Biden said that Hunter Biden was the smartest man he ever knew. Okay, well, the bill, we have teleconferences. Let's see, the photos were also stored on the laptop. So this was one of the images that they were able to find, right? It's a meme. Again, I'm not going to get bent out of shape over a meme. I don't particularly care about it, but right. It's a double standard that really is the problem. The meme dated back to June 5th, 2017. We see it there. It's unclear why Hunter saved the meme. Neither he nor Masiri's responded to comment, right? Yeah, of course, why would they? Now, again, this is where the double standard exists. So this is what the White House posted back on March 21, 2021, said that the statement by the president on the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, one of the core values and beliefs that should bring us together as Americans, is standing against hate and racism. So does Hunter Biden using the N-word, does that count as racism? I would say yes, that it does. It's a racially charged pejorative term. I don't care whether it has the ER or the GA at the end of it. I just choose not to use it. Now, there may be other people that say that's not racism, that's colloquialisms, that's just whatever. Okay, I even for white people to do that? All right, well, maybe. Even as we acknowledge that systemic racism and white supremacy are ugly poisons that have long plagued the United States, we must change the laws that enable discrimination in our country, and we must change our hearts. Okay, well, wonder if they're going to start somewhere like in Hunter Biden's room. Now, Joe says, racism, xenophobia, nativism, and other forms of intolerance are not problems unique to the United States. We have human problems here. Today, on the International Day, we're going to recommit to the fundamental truth, inherent dignity. We must recognize that racism, gender discrimination, and other forms must be eliminated. Under my administration, I signed an order establishing a whole of government approach to equity and racial justice. You see this? He signed an order. On his first day in office, he did. Equity, racial justice. I wonder if Joe put Hunter Biden's name in there at all. We will not shy away from engaging in the hard work. Hate can have no safe harbor in America or the world. We must join together to make it stop. So just a major, does Joe Biden know that? Does he know that his son is kind of a racist individual? Who knows? All right, let's see if we can get some questions queued up in here. I think we might. Let's see if we can get this working here. We're gonna give it about 30 seconds. Then I'm gonna give us an audible here if we can't get it working. So looks like it's working. Here's one. We got Sharon Quidney's in the house. Says, in this context, it's not a racial slur. It's a form of virtue signaling and a way of expressing solidarity and self-identification as one of the black community. Yeah, but Hunter Biden's not black, though. Is he part of the black community? His lawyer's not black either. So I'm having a hard time on that one, I guess. All right, next up we got Sharon Quinney says it could also be just another case of rules for thee versus rules for me. Yeah, so I see what you're doing there, Sharon. All right, let's take a look. We've got E. Dantes says, I would not really care that much about locker room talk, even though inappropriate, if it were not for the thought and speech police. They're looking for any kind of discussion that proves to them that America is racist. Yeah, and so it's my biggest issue with it too. You know, I know that people say things in private that they would never want open in public. And I know that if somebody, you know, went through the entirety of my life, that they'd pick out a bunch of stuff that they'd say that probably wasn't the best thing to do or say or you know, approach to whatever problem you're trying to solve or whatever action you were taking there. And I have empathy for people. I have empathy for addicts in particular, because I am myself one of them, you know, who have been through a lot of trials and tribulations in their lives. But I very rarely, when I catch myself, I try to undo it, find myself dictating to other people what their problems are in a way that we see our government doing to us now. Them getting elected, turning around, telling the rest of the country, the citizenry, that we are something that we're not. Okay, I don't talk like that. I don't communicate that way. Hunter Biden does, right? So maybe they should be lecturing him, stay in their hula hoop before they step out and cross into our hula hoop. I don't appreciate it, and I don't think most Americans do either. All right, so those are the questions that came in for the day. We're going to wrap it up there. I want to thank those of you who asked questions today that I didn't answer. I think this is who you are. And we also have, I want to thank everybody who is supporting us at our locals platform. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com is where you can go and be a part of the show. You can also download a copy of my book. It's called Beginning to Winning. You can download a copy of my slides. Everything that we just went through today is available there for download. Copy of my Existence Systems, which is my personal productivity system. And you can download links throughout the day, post stuff, and meet a lot of other great people at our community over there. On Saturday, June 26th, we have our next monthly locals meetup via Zoom. That's going to be taking place at 7 p.m. Eastern time at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I'll get that registration up shortly. The registration for law enforcement interaction training is up. And so if you are a member at Locals, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, you can go and sign up for this. This is going to be taking place this Saturday at 9 a.m. Arizona time, 12 p.m. Eastern time. About half an hour, and then we'll hang out for another 30 minutes or so if there is interest. And we're going to talk about dealing with law enforcement. So sort of, talking about how to think about this problem. A lot of people ask questions like, what should I say if I get pulled over? And what should I do if the cops call me or they show up at my house? And so we're going to try to establish a little bit of a better framework for processing those incidents so that you have really the tools that you need if you ever find yourself, God forbid, in a situation like that. So should be fun and worthwhile. Going to be taking place 90 minutes. We're going to see how it goes. And if you want to sign up, that is free for all supporters. At watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Before we get out of here, a couple quick reminders. Have some other links to other channels down below. I just released a video yesterday about the dark side pipeline hack. The FBI, they issued a seizure warrant. They went and they took 2.3 million in Bitcoin. And so I go through the entire affidavit. If you're curious about sort of how Bitcoin, at least is being investigated by our federal government and the FBI and the DOJ, that's a very interesting video, and you can learn a little bit more about what happened there. We also have our Arizona Law channel. We're putting out more content about Arizona law. And remember, that's what we do here on a daily basis at the R&R Law Group. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and we love to help good people facing criminal charges find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and in their lives. And so if you happen to know anybody in our state that needs help, we would be honored and humbled if you sent them our direction so that we have the opportunity to help. We can help with any type of criminal charge. Things like misdemeanors or felonies, DUIs, domestic violence, drug assault cases, anything and everything in between, we can help. We can also clear mugshots off the internet. We can help you restore your rights so you can vote and possess a firearm again. I mean, there's a lot that we can do. So if you happen to know anybody in our state that needs our help, all of the information is down in the description box below. We also offer free case evaluations, and we just love to help. So if you happen to know anybody, we'd be honored if you sent them our way. Otherwise, I would invite you, if you have not already done so, to be sure to subscribe to this channel and the other ones if you're interested in them. Otherwise, my friends, we're going to be back here same time, same place tomorrow for yet another show. It's at 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast for that one Florida man. Everybody else, have a tremendous evening. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.